You are lying here tonight, safe in your bed, breathing slowly, listening quietly. The world around you feels calm, predictable, but thousands of years ago, under the very same stars, people also lay down to rest, not knowing that their entire city would be gone by dawn. Not by fire raining from the heavens, not by the clash of 1,000 swords, but by something far stranger. A trick, a wooden trick. Imagine it. An empire that stood for centuries, strong walls that had resisted a decade of siege, heroes who had fought and bled under its gates. And yet, everything crumbled, not to brute strength, but to the shape of an enormous wooden horse, a gift, a hollow promise. That horse could have stood in your own town square. If you had lived then, you might have been one of those who pulled it through the gates with your own hands, laughing, believing the war was over. You might have celebrated beneath the shadow of the very object that carried your destruction inside. Tonight, I will tell you the story of that war. A war that lasted 10 long years. A story of kings and warriors, of betrayals and visions, of love that sparked conflict and of rage that could not be calmed. A story where gods chose sides and humans bore the weight of their games. And finally, a story of one single night when pride and deception determined the fate of Troy. Now, let your breath soften. Let your thoughts drift. And imagine yourself walking back into that ancient world. The smoke of sacrifices rising to the gods. The heavy clang of bronze armor. The hush of a city waiting, unknowing, beneath the stars. And the war still raging, just beyond the walls. Close your eyes now, and imagine you are no longer here in your room in this century. Imagine instead that you are lying down inside a tent, pitched on the dusty ground near the walls of an ancient city. The fabric above you rustles in the night breeze. Beyond it, the stars glitter with the same steady light you see when you step outside your home today. And yet, everything else is different. The air is heavy with scents that no longer belong to our world. You smell smoke from animal sacrifices rising in spirals toward the gods. You catch the salt of the Aegean Sea, drifting inland from the dark shore where 1,000 ships are drawn up side by side. You notice the sharper note of pine resin, dripping from the beams of those ships, sticky and eternal. Mixed together, these smells form the breath of the Bronze Age, sacred, salty, smoky, alive. Listen closely. In the distance, the Greek camps hum like restless hives. The voices of men, warriors, kings, servants, slaves, blur together in a low roar. Somewhere, a flute rises, carrying a melody into the darkness. Further still, you hear the chant of priests offering prayers at makeshift altars, words too old to fully understand, yet resonant in the bones. Between these human sounds, the night itself whispers, the rustle of wind through the tall reeds by the Scamander River, the soft flapping of canvas, the ceaseless song of crickets in the grass. You shift your body against the ground. The earth is warm, but your hand brushes against a stone wall. Cool, damp, ancient. The Trojans sleep within those walls, pressed together in safety. Their homes are of stone and clay, their hearths glowing with embers, their floors covered with woven mats. Outside the walls, the Greeks toss and turn on straw and leather hides, the weight of armor close by, always within reach. You feel it now. The weight of a bronze helmet in your lap, its rim pressing cold against your thighs. Heavy, unyielding, yet necessary. The firelight plays across everything. Torches burn in the Greek camp, their flames bending in the wind. Within Troy, lamps flicker in the windows, leaving golden trails in the night. If you look toward the shore, you can see the faint reflection of the moon on the polished bronze of shields stacked neatly in rows. Even the blades of spears gleam faintly, as if holding the promise of dawn inside them. And dawn does come, slowly. At first, only a paling of the horizon, a faint silver gray over the Black Sea. Then the color deepens into rose and amber, spreading upward like spilled wine across the sky. The world of the Bronze Age awakens. Gulls cry over the shore. Fishermen push their boats into the surf. Soldiers rise from their tents and stretch their weary limbs. The city gates groan open, letting farmers and shepherds slip out to tend their fields. And everywhere, the glint of bronze, catching the first fire of the sun, turning ordinary objects into treasures of gold. But stay here still. Stay within the rhythm of this place. Feel how time is thicker, slower. A single day seems eternal, when every heartbeat might be the last. And yet, for those who live here, this is simply life, the rhythm of survival, the steady beat of war and waiting. Now imagine, not resting in your own bed, but falling asleep on a bundle of straw inside a warrior's tent. Hear the faint voices around you fade into the hush of the night. Smell the fire smoke drifting in lazy curls. Feel the fabric of rough linen beneath your cheek. And in that drowsy moment, sense time slipping away, carrying you back gently into an age of gods and heroes. The gates of Troy are ahead. The camps of the Greeks stretch behind, and you are standing between them in the stillness, waiting for the story to unfold. At first light, when the sea is still a sheet of dim silver, and the gulls have not yet found their voices, Cleon ties the leather strap of his helmet and listens to his mother knead bread. The dough sighs under her palms. She presses, folds, rests, a rhythm older than war. Steam rises from the hearth, soft and yeasty, and the small kitchen breathes with it, warm against the coolness that clings to the stone walls. His sister hums as she lays out olives in a small dish of honey. Outside, the city stretches, waking carefully like a creature with bruised ribs. He is young, too young, his mother sometimes says, yet the bronze fits him now. The straps have molded to the curve of his jaw. The shield's rim no longer bites his forearm. When he walks, the weight is familiar, a part of him, like a promise he made long ago and must keep. But there are mornings when he pauses with the bread still in his mouth and thinks, what if my promise is to the living, not to the dead? What if the bravest thing is not the charge, but the return? Eat, his mother says, not looking up. Do not argue with the dawn. She is small, with hands that can wring water from wool and comfort from silence. She sprinkles sesame on the loaves, and almost to herself, murmurs a prayer to the household gods. His sister, Ilara, rolls her eyes at piety, and then realizing she has done it, blushes. She has a way of laughing with her eyebrows. She can tell him a joke just by raising one. This morning, she does not. The air has shifted. Some days war is a distant thunder. Some days it stands in the doorway, patient, already inside. Cleon moves through their courtyard and stops to touch the little altar tucked into the wall niche. A sprig of laurel, a bowl of barley. He tries to pray, but the words come out as breath. He is not sure which god to ask. He is not even certain what to ask for. Victory? Peace? A day without news? He takes the path toward the upper street, where the stones shine from 1,000 feet, and joins the trickle of men in armor, heading for the western gate. The city smells of wood smoke, time crushed under sandals, and the faint sweetness of figs. From the towers, the guards lean and look outward, across the plain to the scatter of Greek tents and the dark stubble of masts at the shore. Near the gate, a group of boys toss a knucklebone and pretend it is a prize worth killing for. They are loud and then suddenly quiet when they see the soldiers. One boy, the smallest, stares at Cleon's greaves as if the polished bronze can tell the future. "Bring back a story," the boy says, not teasing. Cleon nods, and he means to say, "I will bring back bread, not a story." But the boy has already run on, and the moment passes. On the wall walk, the wind is cool. From here, Troy looks layered, the roofs like fish scales, the alleys thin as threads, the temples white and patient. Beyond, the camps of the Greeks lie like a second city, low and restless, with the constant flicker of fire. The two worlds face one another in silence, a silence with teeth. He trains in the courtyard below the western tower. The master of arms is a broad man, with a voice that could cut stone, yet he speaks gently this morning, as though the day might overhear and relent. "Again," he says, "find the breath between strikes." They practice until the wooden swords sweat in their hands. Cleon raises his shield to the imagined blow, steps into the empty space it leaves, and, for a heartbeat, feels graceful. He wants to carry that feeling home, to set it on the table beside the bread. Something simple and good that has nothing to do with blood. Later, he sits in the thin strip of shade near the tower, helmet off, hair damp, and watches the city's life run along its familiar grooves. A woman with a jar on her shoulder laughs at something the baker shouts. Two old men argue softly about the price of goats last spring. A priest passes with a small procession, the bronze bells at his waist chiming like tiny birds. The bells are new, Cleon thinks, and then wonders who went to the market beyond the walls to trade for them. Was the road safe? Did the Greek sentries look away for a moment and let the world be ordinary? The first time he saw Hector up close, the prince was not on a chariot, not in armor, not performing the hero he was born to be. He was crouched beside a boy with a scraped knee, tearing strips from his own linen to bind it. He moved with a calm that felt like shade. Cleon stood at a distance, understanding why men would follow this one into fire. Hector had spoken, softly, so the boy would not fear, and then looked up and met Cleon's eyes. Not a long glance, not a hero's blessing, just a quick, human seeing. It had been enough. For weeks afterward, when the city quaked with rumor, Cleon steadied himself by recalling that look. Daylight in a narrow room. He has seen Paris too. Beautiful, perfumed, a flash of color at the temple steps. Paris walks as if streets should step aside for him. People do, sometimes. His voice is music when he speaks. His hands are soft. Paris can loose an arrow as neatly as a seamstress threads a needle, and it's said that the gods smile when he plays the lyre. But when Cleon thinks of him, it is not the charm that lingers. It is the way Paris stares a heartbeat longer at his own reflection in a bronze basin, checking that the man he shows the world has not slipped. Aeneas is different again, a steady ember rather than a flame. Cleon watched him once at the eastern gate as he checked the spear points of his men. There was nothing theatrical in him, no reach for the crowd. He spoke in the practical music of orders and reassurance. Aeneas said a quiet word to the oldest soldier, squeezed the shoulder of the youngest, and then looked toward the hills, as if measuring a path only he could see. Piety wraps him like an invisible cloak, the elders say. He will do what must be done and then go home to sit beside his father, patient as evening. At night, the three men become figures in Cleon's mind, as clear as constellations. Hector, the tree whose shade feeds a city. Paris, the bright fruit that draws bees and stings. Aeneas, the path that remains after the grass has grown back. Cleon tells himself he must choose a star to follow, but choosing is not simple. He thinks of Ilara's cruel little joke. Pick courage as if it were a garment, she once teased while mending his tunic. Wear it, then hang it up neat at dusk. He had laughed, but courage does not hang neatly. It sleeps beside him and wakes before he does. He returns home at midday. The heat presses gently. In the courtyard, his mother sets the loaves to cool on a woven rack. The smell makes the day bloom. Ilara dips a crust in oil and holds it out to him. Bite, she says, and when he does, she grins, the eyebrows doing their acrobatics. See, the gods favor us, today at least. He sits on the low bench and watches their small choreography. The way his mother wipes flour from the table with the side of her hand. The way Ilara turns the loaves so the bottoms firm evenly. He wants to stay inside this scene. He wants to freeze the city at the moment when bread and laughter share the same air. Instead, he asks about news. The question is a habit, like chewing or breathing. News. Ilara lifts a shoulder. You know more than we do. Only that training hurts less when you are worried, he says. Then be very brave and very worried, she answers, satisfied with the contradiction. It suits you. Their father used to say the same before fever took him in a winter of bad wind. A carpenter by trade, he believed in thick beams and simple promises. He once told Cleon, most houses fall because someone wanted a fancy arch where a plain lintel would do. Cleon thinks of that when he looks at the city. How much of survival is plain work and solid wood, not golden speech. He feels the urge to go to the workshop and smell the cedar shavings still caught in the cracks of the bench. But he does not. The workshop is both comfort and ache. That afternoon, he is sent to the market with Ilara to trade for herbs and lamp oil. The market is thinner than it was before the war, yet it still manages a quick, bright pulse. A woman sells coriander and stories in equal measure. A boy with a sling demonstrates his aim by knocking ripe dates from a hanging strand. A potter rotates a shallow bowl in his hands and explains, to no one in particular, that the shape of the rim keeps stew from leaping out when a child stirs too excitedly. Ilara listens with that attentive mischief of hers. She buys the bowl. For our stew, she says, and for the story. On the way home, they pause at a small shrine of Apollo. Flowers, more stems than petals, are tucked into the cracks. The stone is warm. A flute moves somewhere behind them, and for a moment, the entire city seems to breathe in unison. Ilara closes her eyes, not for piety, but for the pleasure of shade. If the god were to step out, she whispers, I would ask him to teach me the song that keeps men from lying. She opens one eye, or the one that keeps men from leaving. I would ask him to make the Greeks sail away, Cleon says. She nods, then shakes her head, then nods again. That is 2 songs, she decides, a difficult instrument. At sunset, the walls glow like bread crust. The horizon drinks the last of the light, and the city gathers itself. Fires are lit. Lullabies drift from doorways. The guards change shifts with more ritual than noise. Cleon climbs the western tower for the night watch, steps sighs to the ancient stones. The plain is a dark sea now, and the Greek fires are islands in it. He leans into the parapet and lets the night air cool his skin. If he listens long enough, the two cities blur. A joke in one camp lifts, crosses, and lands in the other as a sigh. "First watch?" a voice asks. Myron, broad-shouldered, quick to grin, quick to quiet when grief passes. His father is a bowyer who can read the curve of wood like a palm. They have grown up side by side, escaping lessons together when they were small, then returning, guilty and pleased, when hunger found them. "First," Cleon says. "Good," Myron answers, settling his back against the stone. First ends. He closes his eyes, not sleeping, just measuring calm. After a time, he says, "When the war is done, I will go to the hills and make a house out of cedar. I will marry a woman who laughs while she kneads bread. I will have a dog. He will be stupid and loyal." "Why cedar?" Cleon asks, smiling into the dark. "Because it endures," Myron says simply. "Because it smells like a promise that keeps itself." Cleon considers this. "I want—" He stops, surprised to find that the word itself is the labor. To want so openly is to tear the cloth of caution. He breathes. "I want a year without alarms, a year where nothing happens, and when something does, it is a festival and not a funeral." "That is a good house," Myron says. "We will be neighbors." They stand in companionable quiet. Somewhere far off, a lyre rises and falls. On the road beyond the Dardanian gate, a string of lanterns moves. Late shepherds, perhaps, or a priest returning from a hill shrine with ash still clinging to his fingers. The stars are clear. The night becomes a bowl, and the city sits at its center, warm and held. Toward midnight, a messenger climbs the steps. He carries news in the quickness of his breath, in the way he touches the railing at each turn, as if steadying the words he will deliver. News is a creature with many legs. It enters every room before the man who brings it arrives. But tonight, the creature is calm. The messenger nods to the captain, speaks low, and the captain's shoulders lift and then ease. An exchange of relief moves along the wall, like a breeze passing over a field, flattening, raising, soothing. After the messenger goes, the captain circles his men, like a shepherd checking a fence. He stops beside Cleon. "Your shield," he says, and runs his finger along the rim to a spot Cleon had meant to smooth and had not. "Fix it. It will bite you when you are tired." His voice is not unkind. He smells of leather and sleep denied. "I will, Captain," Cleon says. "Not tomorrow," the captain adds. "Now, I will watch your section while you work." Cleon blinks at the night. His first instinct is to resent the correction. His second is gratitude. He finds a sliver of rough stone and worries at the spot until the rim is obedient again. The work is small, focused, almost musical. When he returns to his post, the captain nods once, and Cleon feels steadier than before. Not because he is closer to glory, but because a little edge has been made smooth. The world is often just that, edges, and how we live beside them. He remembers Hector again, binding the boy's knee. He remembers Paris, gleaming. Aeneas, measuring a distance no one else can see. He remembers, too, his mother's hands pressing dough into the shape that holds its own warmth. He imagines the city not as walls and gates and towers, but as a mesh of small labors, loaves, repairs, jokes, songs, each one the size of a hand and the weight of a promise. He thinks, if I am brave, let it be for this. There is a moment, just before dawn, when even the crickets sleep. The plain rests, the sea draws a long breath, the Greek fires go from orange to coal, and then to whisper. In that tender, empty space, Cleon closes his eyes and leans his forehead against the cool stone. He does not pray for victory. He does not pray for a hero's name. He prays softly for a morning where Alara teases him about nothing, where his mother asks him to carry water because the amphora is heavy and he is strong. He prays for a city where the loudest sound is the slap of clean laundry on a river rock. When the first line of light lifts the edge of the world, he feels both smaller and more awake. The captain changes the watch. Myron stretches and jokes about stupid dogs. The gates creak. Somewhere below, a woman calls a child in from the courtyard, her voice the exact note between command and lullaby. The market will open again, thin but alive. The priests will tie fresh ribbons at the shrines. News will arrive, soft-footed or shouting. Work will be done. Cleon picks up his helmet, weighs it in his hands, and then sets it gently on his head. The bronze is cool. The leather smells of oil and smoke and the salt of his own skin. He breathes once, twice, finding the rhythm between strikes even here, where no blow has yet been thrown. He looks across the plain at the distant ships and, beyond them, at the space where the horizon keeps its secrets. He tells himself quietly that he will cross the day by small bridges, a repair made, a joke returned, a task done, a loaf shared. He does not know that history will soon change its gait, that a shape of wood will roll into the measure of his life and alter every path. He does not know that one night will ask of him a decision shaped like a door, with 2 exits and no return. He knows only this moment, the taste of honey still on his tongue from the morning's bread, the cool of the stone, the reliable weight of the shield, the thin gold of the coming sun. He holds these things the way a careful man holds water in his palms, steady, close, generous, with nothing but ready to spill joy if joy spills safely. Below, the city wakes, again and again. Above, the sky cannot help being clear. Between them, Cleon steps into the day, his fear and hope braided like a rope strong enough to hold for 1 more hour, and then 1 more after that. And as he walks, you can almost hear the softer story inside the louder one. A boy who wants to live, who would choose a plain lintel over a perfect arch. The arch, who would trade a song of victory for a year of quiet, who has learned to make his courage by hand, the way his mother makes bread, press, fold, rest, rise. He passes the altar in the niche and touches it, lightly, respectfully, as if greeting a friend. He thinks of the house he might build one day, with cedar beams and a doorway that opens to evening. He thinks of neighbors and stupid dogs and a bowl shaped to keep stew from leaping out when a child stirs too excitedly. He smiles, not at glory, but at the sheer possibility of errands, and with that small human wish turning warm in his chest, he goes to meet whatever the day will ask, carrying in his measured stride both the city he must defend and the peaceful life he longs, gently, to deserve. At dawn, the city exhales. Smoke threads upward from 100 hearths, thin as hair, then thickens when the cook fires catch. Troy under siege is not silence. It is a careful rearrangement of sound. The market opens, but lightly, as if not to wake a sleeping animal. Baskets are set out with fewer figs, fewer olives, fewer words. The spice seller measures coriander with a thumb and forefinger pinch and makes the scale read generosity with the tilt of her smile. The fishmonger's stall, once a small ocean of silver, now shows only a handful of glistening bodies, laid out like commas in a sentence cut short. People stand longer at the temple steps. The stone there is polished by hope. Women bring small braids of wool, jars of oil, a child's curl tied in red thread. Men arrive with the clatter of armor that pretends to be confidence. The priests move like slow rivers, hands raised, voices quiet. Smoke of sacrifice rises. Resin, fat, a sweetness that says, "We remember who we are. Let the gods remember us." Some pray for victory. Many pray for bread. There are days when the market square seems to hold two cities at once. In one, a girl counts coins for lamp oil and smiles because she has exactly enough. In the other, a man stares at his empty purse, listening for a miracle. The stall of the potter who used to sell amphorae painted with sea creatures now shows pots without decoration, sturdy and satisfied with usefulness. A mother taps one with a fingernail. The sound is honest. She buys it. She will stew lentils in it, and the steam will smell like thrift and time. Under siege, time itself learns to be modest. Work shrinks to the size of the day. The men repair sandals, patch roofs, mend nets they cannot use, while the harbor is watched. The women bake, weave, carry water, carry news. Children play war with sticks, and then, in the same breath, play house with pebbles. A boy chalks a hopscotch grid on the dust beside the city wall. A guard steps around it without comment. When they pass the baker, people move as if they are passing a shrine. He carries the future in his pans. Flour means promise. Yeast means patience rewarded. In this narrowed life, the women are the city's heartbeat. Andromache moves through her courtyard like a soft commandment. She balances a jar on her shoulder, and the world seems momentarily balanced with it. Her son, little Astyanax, reaches for the jar's shadow on the wall and giggles when it trembles. Andromache's hands are deft with work, kneading, braiding, washing. But her eyes live in two places at once, on the child and beyond the gate where Hector will appear, or not. She has learned to fold fear into the fabric of the day so it doesn't tear. When other women ask what she prays for, she says, "For ordinary evenings." She does not say, "For miracles," though the word sits quietly in her throat. Cassandra moves differently. She steps as if she can hear the city's future creaking in its hinges. People make space for her without meaning to. She carries speech like a bowl filled to the lip. One move too quick and it spills, unwanted. She warns. They smile with the gentleness reserved for the perpetually mistaken. Her hair smells faintly of laurel, her eyes of distance. When she passes the market stalls, some women cross themselves against ill luck, then feel guilty and press an apple into her hand. She thanks them and bites, and for a moment a simple human sweetness overrules the terrible music in her mind. Later, she places the apple on the shrine of a god who does not listen, and still she thanks him. It is not piety, it is practice. Gratitude keeps her from breaking. And then there is Helen, whom the city both adores and blames in the same breath. She moves with the quiet of someone who knows that every gesture will be counted twice, once for its meaning and once for its price. Up close, she is not a statue, but a woman who tucks loose hair behind her ear when the wind kicks up. She buys bread like anyone else. She weighs the loaf in her palm, tests its crust with a thumb. Some look away when she comes. Some look too long. When children gather to stare, she kneels to their height and asks their names, one by one. In that kneeling, you can see both the power that once shifted the course of kings and the exhaustion of a person who has become a symbol she never auditioned to play. She knows the rules of hospitality and the wounds made when they are broken. Her presence is a bruise on the city's conscience, proof of how quickly a guest can become a storm. Beyond the walls, the Achaean camp breathes with a different chest. The sea is their back, the plain their table. 1,000 ships lie beached like sleeping cattle, their ribs tar-dark, their bellies filled with memories of crossing. Between the lines of tents, paths have been worn into the earth, to the cook fires, to the council circle, to the places where men go to be alone. The camp has its own market too, a barter of captured kettles and stories, of armor fittings and fish hooks hammered from bronze scraps. A man with a scar sells dice carved from the ankle bone of a stag. His laugh suggests luck is a map he knows how to read. Quarrels are as common as stew, and sometimes as necessary. The loudest of them split the air like oars in a narrow channel. Achilles and Agamemnon, pride against pride, the argument turning on honor and a woman's name, then widening until it seems to include the horizon itself. In the wake of their anger, the camp changes color. Achilles withdraws. The music of war shifts a key lower. Men who swore to follow him stand heavy with dilemma. Patroclus moves among them with a lamp-like calm, saying little, binding small cuts, speaking to the horses as if they too need reassurance. In his quiet, the camp remembers its gentler grammar. Yet even kindness cannot unmake the quarrel. The stew simmers. The men eat. Night arrives with an expression that says, "Work it out before dawn," as if war were a craft taught by patient teachers. Odysseus walks the aisles of tents with a mind that's always 3 moves ahead. He holds a spear like any other man, but it is the tongue he sharpens most often. Where others lift shields, he lifts stories, fables that convince, plans folded inside plans. In councils, he listens as if the words are pebbles he can sort by weight with his ears alone. He knows how to praise another man's strength in a way that makes him want to use it. He is careful with anger. He saves it for doors that won't open. He can turn hunger into patience by dividing it into tasks. When he speaks of the future, his voice makes it sound almost domestic, like a house already furnished if only you agree where to put the door. The differences between city and camp are many and also few. In both places, sleep is a narrow bridge. In both, the gods are invited to dinner, aloud or silently. In both, men polish armor with the same attentiveness that women reserve for polishing the inside of a pot. In both, songs keep time. Lullabies within the walls, marching chants on the plain. In both, every piece of good news is smaller than a fist and still worth carrying carefully from mouth to ear. A treasure of syllables that warms whoever holds it a moment longer than they need to. And yet the contrast is sharp when the sun is high and the dust rises. Heroic names stride through conversation like tall figures casting long shade, while ordinary backs bend over ordinary work. Hector, whose voice steadies the wall walk. Achilles, whose absence is as loud as his battle shout. Aeneas, who measures distance with responsibility rather than desire. Ajax, a tower who forgets he is made of flesh until flesh reminds him. Menelaus, whose jaw holds the bitterness of a man who has misplaced a vow and wants the world to help him find it. These names gleam. Behind them move unnamed hands. The boy who stirs the cookpot, the woman who stitches a strap, the old man who checks the hinge on a gate with the knowledge of a lifetime that no poet will sing. Glory is a garment sewn by many, worn by few. Underneath the daily chores, there is the older foundation, the social laws that taught these people who they are. Hospitality, xenia, is the brightest thread. A guest arrives. The host offers bread before questions. The water bowl is passed. A stool is set. The gods walk disguised, they say. To honor the stranger is to honor the possibility of the divine at your table. And thus, the war's first wound is not merely the taking of a woman, but the breaking of a host's trust. Paris was a guest in Menelaus's house. The laws of bread and salt were on his tongue. When he left with Helen, he carried not only beauty, but a torn contract between households, between worlds. The rupture echoes. It turns oaths into spears. Oaths, those spoken bridges between separate lives, bind this war as tightly as rope. When Helen was to be married, her suitor swore to protect the chosen husband and the peace that choice represented. The oath was clever. It prevented bloodshed then and summoned bloodshed later. Now, years on, the men in the Achaean camp are held as much by that old promise as by pride. Sometimes, late at night, a man smiles into the darkness at the memory of his younger self, all wine and courage, thinking an oath was a kind of music that would make his life dance. Then he turns and sleeps on the other side, where dreams are quieter. Revenge moves in this world like a wind with a map of its own. A blow calls for balance. A death requests an answer. The writing of scales becomes a craft passed from father to son, from story to story. But even here, mercy appears like a new road someone had not noticed before. When Priam, the old king, later walks into the Greek camp to ransom Hector's body, he will be escorted not by rank, but by the remnant of hospitality that refuses to die. Achilles, with salt on his face that has nothing to do with sea, will remember the shared human meal under all the feasts of victory. For a breath, the oldest laws will get to speak again, and their voice will be gentler than bronze. Within Troy, the codes soften the hard edges of waiting. A neighbor leaves half a loaf on a sill and pretends the wind placed it there. A midwife passes through a guarded street without challenge because birth outranks war in the city's private hierarchy. The baths still steam on certain days. The water lifts grief from shoulders as well as dust. Old women sing work songs that do not mention battle at all. They rhyme soap with hope, linen with listening. A teacher, short of wax tablets, speaks lessons into the air and makes the children repeat, so memory itself becomes a cupboard for later. In the Greek camp, where supplies come by sea and patience comes by training, the social fabric is policed by rank and ritual. Speeches, sacrifices, the careful distribution of meat, thigh bones for the gods, fat for the flames, portions for the captains, then for the rest. A man who sulks refuses his slice. A man who reconciles eats what he is given and finds it tasty. The elders argue about what courage is today. One says it is standing fast. Another says it is knowing when to bend. Odysseus adds mildly that courage is remembering the purpose of the oars when the storm wants to teach you swimming instead. And all the while, the border between the world of heroes and the world of households keeps shifting. A child in Troy wears a toy helmet made from a gourd and marches in a line of two, then peels off to chase a dog. A blacksmith in the camp, exhausted, shapes a spearhead, and then, without thinking, shapes a small hook for a fisherman he will never meet. Muscle memory from the village he left years ago. An old man in the city teaches his grandson how to read the weather from the smell of dust. A young sailor on the shore learns that the names of stars are also the names of wishes. When the day heightens, the contrast seems cruel. When evening comes, it softens. The sunset leans equally over wall and tent. There is a moment, just one, when both sides pause with their hands full of nothing and their eyes full of color. Then the horn sounds in the camp. The bell sounds in the city. Darkness sorts everyone back into their appointed places. Fires are banked. Watchwords are exchanged. Lullabies and laments take turns at the window. On such nights, the codes hum themselves to sleep. Hospitality dozes with one eye open. Oaths curl like ropes beside a boat, coiled but ready. Revenge stalks the edge of the plain and nods at mercy, an old rival, not unkind. In the homes of Troy, Andromache braids her hair with fingers that remember joy, even as they rehearse grief. Cassandra watches the stars that refuse to bend their pattern to her warnings. Helen sits by a lamp and sews by steady habit, mending, always mending, fabric that will hold against daily use, even if it could not hold the world. And outside, the Achaean camp counts the wind. Odysseus whispers draftings of plans into the ear of the night, as if the night will keep his secrets until he needs them. Achilles sits with Patroclus, or alone, measuring a wound that pride made and loss will deepen. Agamemnon walks among his captains, tallying provisions and grudges. Somewhere, a young man writes a letter he will never deliver, telling his mother that the sea is beautiful and the sand gets everywhere, and that he is brave, truly brave, in all the small ways that do not win songs. Under siege, a city learns to be many things at once, proud and kind, hungry and generous, afraid and stubbornly alive. The market's emptiness becomes a discipline. The temple's smoke becomes a grammar for what cannot be said plain. The codes, hospitality, oath, vengeance, cease to be abstractions and become furniture. You sit on them. You rest your head on them. You stub your toe against them in the dark and mutter. And then you thank them for being there when the floor is shifting. As the night deepens, the rhythm slows. The city is a bowl in soft hands. You can hear the low murmur of prayers that do not ask for miracles anymore, only for enough water, enough patience, enough dawn. On the plain, the camp settles into the quiet clink of armor set aside, the last hiss of a fire taught to behave. Across that narrow distance, two worlds keep each other awake and put each other to sleep. Tomorrow, markets will thin again, and still the baker will proof the dough. Tomorrow, a woman will carry a jar to the well and return with water and news. Tomorrow, the camp will argue and reconcile and plan. Tomorrow, the old laws will be tested by new tricks. The shape of a gift no one can resist, the sweetness of wood, and the shadow inside it. But for now, between wall and tent, hero and household, promise and price, the night holds steady. Breathe with it, slowly, gently, into the kind of rest that makes endurance possible. Let us lift gently above the tents and towers and look at the long arc of the war, the way a patient star might watch a coastline for years. 10 summers and 10 winters pass like beads on a string. Ships beach and mend. Fields wither and green again. Boys become men. Men practice being old before their time. The story does not belong to a single day or a single hero. It is a woven cloth, thick with many hands. When you look closely, you can see the threads, honor and hunger, oath and pride, love and the wish to be remembered, crossing and recrossing until a picture appears. In the early years, assaults surge against Troy's walls and slide away, as waves test a rock and then subside, learning its shape. The Greeks, Achaeans, set up their world on foreign sand. Councils, sacrifices, arguments, songs. The Trojans answer with gates that open and close like calm eyelids, with swords that sting and then vanish, with a faith that the city is more than stone. Skirmishes have their own music, chariots rumbling like short thunder, bronze ringing like distant bells, the steady breath of men who know that steadiness is itself a weapon. And then comes the quarrel that turns the war's current. Achilles, the swift, and Agamemnon, the high king whose title weighs more than his wisdom. They do not fight over strategy or the choosing of a battlefield. They fight over wounded pride shaped into the names of women, over the arithmetic of honor. In the council, Achilles' hand jumps to his sword. Rage flashes like heat at noon. Athena, mind within war, calm within heat, touches him, invisible to all but him, and his fingers loosen. Words are sharper than blades today, she seems to say. Sheathing them now is a victory no poet will sing, but the gods will see. Achilles withdraws from battle. He wraps his greatness and silence around himself like a cloak that warms no one. The camp learns what absence weighs. Without him, each day seems a little shorter in courage, a little longer in consequence. The Trojans feel the shift at once. Their princes ride closer to the Greek trenches. Their footmen stand taller on the wall walk. Hector, the city's pillar, becomes not only a commander, but a pattern of breath the men can copy. In, out, forward, hold. He knows the taste of fear and the use of it, how it sharpens the mind if you do not let it eat the heart. He fights as if every street behind him had a child's name, as if every alley were a promise. Under his steadiness, the Trojans push the Greeks back to their ships. Fire licks a hull. Shouts strike the shore like thrown stones. For a moment, the sea seems ready to reclaim what it delivered. In Achilles' tent, Quiet pulls a chair and sits. Patroclus watches his friend with the patience of someone who knows the difference between soothing and solving. He speaks not to inflame, but to uncoil. If you will not fight for the king, fight for the men, he suggests, tender and practical at once. Achilles agrees to a compromise that is not a compromise at all. Patroclus will wear the famous armor, bright as sunrise, to hearten the troops and unsettle the enemy. Achilles, who can command storms, cannot command the gentle weather of fate. He warns his friend not to chase glory too far, to be a tide that turns the day and then returns. The day turns. The Greeks, seeing the familiar gleam, rally. The Trojans, thinking Achilles has returned, waver. Patroclus, whose courage is made of kindness as well as skill, steps one measure beyond caution. On the battlefield, gods as old as weather lean in. Apollo, guardian of Troy, dissolves Patroclus' strength with a touch no one sees. Armor slips. Certainty slips with it. Hector strikes. The young man falls, and the war falls with him into a deeper key. The plain goes on breathing. The sea goes on breathing. But something inside the story holds its breath. Grief remakes Achilles the way fire remakes metal. Hephaestus, the smith of gods, hammers new armor at the request of Thetis, Achilles' sea-born mother. The shield is a world in itself. Fields and cities, weddings and dances, plowmen and dogs, wars and truces, life's circle engraved in light and bronze. Holding it, Achilles is not merely protected. He is reminded of what he once fought to preserve. He returns to battle, a storm no one can outpace. Grief and rage braided into a rope strong enough to pull the day in his direction. The Trojans bend. Hector stands, because standing is what he knows. The duel is inevitable and impossibly human. Two men, more alike than their banners admit, meet in the open, while city and camp hold still. Hector's eyes measure distance and duty. Achilles' eyes hold a fire that wants payment. They circle, they speak, they throw, spears like questions, shields like answers. Athena tips the balance once more, miming the voice of Hector's brother to trick him into a fatal risk. The god's intervention is quiet. The outcome rings. Achilles strikes. Hector falls. In that falling, the war loses a father. The city groans with a sound that is not on any instrument. Achilles, beside himself, drags the body, anger pulling love behind it like a captive, and for a few days, the old laws of pity seem burned away. But the world, even here, remembers its older grammar. Priam, Hector's father, thin with grief and thick with courage, enters the Greek camp at night, touches Achilles' knees, the gesture that turns a man back into a man, and speaks as one father to another. Zeus watches. Hermes guides. Achilles sees not a king, but a mirror. Age, love, the uselessness of rage against death. He returns the body. For a breath held by gods and mortals alike, hospitality hydrates the dry throat of vengeance. The pyre lifts flame. The city receives its sun. The war, softened but not unmade, resumes its long, exhausted rhythm. Years pass in a slow wheel. Raids and truces alternate like beads of different colors. Achilles' own end approaches. Arrow and ankle, prophecy and chance. And with him, many of the names that once filled the air like banners. Still, Troy stands. Still, the ships wait. Strategy has met stone and found it stubborn. It is here that a different kind of strength is asked for. Not the arm, not the chariot, but the mind that can imagine a door where others see only wall. Odysseus, who has always carried maps inside his thinking, listens to the war the way a sailor listens to wind, not only for loudness, but for subtler directions. He knows stories have power over men, and that objects can carry stories the way vessels carry wine. The idea of the horse arrives like a visitor from the edge of sense, part prayer, part joke, part trap, and settles into usefulness as it is spoken aloud. A gift, he says. A token of surrender, he says. A machine of belief, he might have said, had there been such a phrase in that age. Athena, wisdom armed, breathes on the plan lightly, the way a potter moistens clay to help the shaping. Epius, a craftsman with hands loyal to a line and a measure, builds the body. Ribs of fur, flanks of planks, a hollow that can hold men and the slow drums of their hearts. Nails bite wood, rope binds, the shape acquires its destiny. Sinon, given the task of telling the story that will make the shape irresistible, rehearses his lies as if they were prayers and finds that a convincing lie borrows the posture of truth, humility, detail, a little exhaustion. The Greeks feign departure. Their ships pull back to a nearby island, sails furled like secret smiles. The beach is suddenly empty of clamor, as day is empty after a fair leaves town. On the sand stands the horse, impossible and inviting, an absence in the shape of an animal. The Trojans pour onto the plain to look. They circle. They argue. They touch the wood with the same curiosity a hand has when it reaches for a newborn's cheek. Wonder, suspicion, tenderness. Laocoon warns, "Beware of Greeks, even bearing gifts," and hurls his spear. It vibrates, a tuning fork announcing that there is music inside. Cassandra, her eyes bruised by futures, speaks the truth no one wants to swallow. The city's mood leans, then leans back. Myths are not minutes. They are weather. In some tellings, serpents rise from the sea to silence Laocoon and confirm a god's will. In all tellings, The human thing happens. Belief chooses comfort over caution, hope over history. Gates open not to enemies, but to the sweetness of being done. Ropes are thrown. The horse rolls home on wheels, made from the desire to celebrate. Flowers find its feet. Songs walk beside it. The city's throat clears to sing. Night folds itself over Troy, like dark linen over a table set for mourning. Fires dim. Wine is poured. Feet that have learned only to march learn, briefly, to dance again. You can almost hear the city's shoulders drop, the way a burden finally sets down. But inside the gift, silence arranges itself into a plan. Breath is measured. Hands find the leather of sword hilts by memory. At a signal as soft as a hand clapping once in a theater, the belly loosens. The hidden men step into the hall of the sleeping city. Doors that have been closed for 10 years open to those they were meant to keep out. The fleet, waiting just beyond the curve of the coast, returns on cat feet, oars stirring the water with the etiquette of conspirators. What follows is the end of a long weather. We need not dwell on the details, for we are telling a story for sleep. Know this: the city that had rehearsed for siege could not rehearse for dream. Flames find beams as surely as rain finds roofs. Cries any city knows, names called down a street, a mother's count of children, are folded into other cries that no city should know. Aeneas, who has always measured distance with duty, gathers his father on his back and his household gods in his arms and steps into a path that will one day earn a poet's patience. Priam meets his ending with dignity that convinces even enemies to lower their eyes. Somewhere in the smoke, Cleon, our young Trojan, chooses a door. Whatever lies beyond it, his wish for an ordinary year glows longer than the fire. And the horse remains, even as wood turns to ash. Not the object, but the idea. It settles into story as a symbol with many faces. Cunning overcoming force. Patience outwitting pride. The way a belief, once invited inside, can change a city faster than catapults. It teaches that gifts have shadows, that hospitality can be a hinge as well as a blessing, that victory sometimes arrives disguised as surrender. It is not a lesson against trust, but a lesson for discernment. Bread should still be offered to guests, but eyes must be kept open. The gods in this tale are not distant decorations. They are weather systems with preferences. Aphrodite, born of foam and desire, protects Paris and Helen and the heat that drew them together, reminding mortals that love can tilt kingdoms as easily as it tilts a face toward a kiss. Athena favors craft, in speech, in wood, in war, and leans her wise weight onto the balance when men forget that thought is a tool. Zeus, whose sky is large enough for all outcomes, permits fate to fulfill itself by degrees, as if the universe were a scale that needs a certain amount of grain before the pans settle. They do not erase human choice. They loom behind it, like mountains behind a village, changing the wind without walking the streets. What, then, does this long war tell us, cradled here in the dark? That bravery comes in different tempos. The charge, the stand, the refusal, the apology. That a city is held up as much by bread and lullabies as by spears and speeches. That anger can be a torch for a moment and a wildfire if carried too long. That grief can turn strength cruel or turn it tender, and that a hand on a knee can be stronger than any chain. Most of all, the story whispers that minds make doors where walls insist, and that a quiet idea can finish what 10 loud years cannot. The horse is also a mirror, and we may glance into it gently. Sometimes, in our own time, we invite inside a shape that flatters us. An easy answer, a rumor wearing a ribbon, a certainty that tastes like relief. We bring it past our gates because it promises to end a siege we are tired of naming. Later, we discover the compartments hidden within. The tale does not scold us for this. It puts a hand on our shoulder and suggests we look more closely, smell the wood, tap the plank, ask the mind to walk around the gift twice before we wheel it home. And yet, the lesson is not only caution. There is hope woven into the final pattern. If cunning can undo a city, then wisdom can build one. If a story can cause a gate to open, another story can teach a gate to hold until dawn. If gods lean toward the clever, perhaps they also lean toward the kind of clever that saves rather than ruins. The plan that feeds, the trick that prevents blood, the invention that turns swords into plowshares and shields into shining bowls for fruit. Breathe with the story now, slowly. See how the noise has quieted, how the bronze has cooled, how the sea resumes its patient counting of the shore. Imagine the plain emptying of tents, the walls of Troy warm long after the flames die, holding in their stones the laughter of markets, the footfalls of princes, the whispered warnings of a woman who could not make her truth comfortable enough to swallow. Imagine a new city rising in another age, remembering and forgetting at the same time, as all cities do. 10 years become one night. One night becomes a lesson held in the palm, soft as bread. Wars are not always won by the sword. Sometimes they are decided by a story, by the choice to listen to the quiet voice that suggests a different door, by the discipline to see through the shine of a gift to the emptiness or danger within, or to the usefulness if we are the ones crafting it for good. Under the same stars that watched Achilles and Hector, we rest and consider our own gates, our own guests, our own oaths, and what we will build when morning comes. Let the thought settle like ash into fertile soil. Let the clamor of 10 years drift out over the water and become only a rumor the gulls won't repeat. Let the horse stand where it now belongs. In memory, a reminder that strength has more shapes than iron, that wisdom can wear wood, and that the mind, kept clear and kind, can be the quiet hero who brings everyone home. Morning arrives dressed like mercy. The beach is empty of Greek shouting. The masts that bristled against the horizon are gone, as if the sea has gathered up a long argument and taken it away to think. In their place stands a shape no one can ignore. A wooden horse, taller than the city gates, ribs like the hull of a ship turned upward, flanks smooth, as if hands had tried to read them. The people of Troy spill through the Scaean gate and down onto the plain as if the day itself were a festival. They circle the horse the way bees circle a new flower, curious, delighted, a little frantic. Fingers tap the wood, test its grain, admire the joinery. Someone laughs and says the Greeks, tired of fighting, have left a monument to their own stubbornness. Someone else says the horse is a vow carved into wood. We will not return. The sound of relief moves through the crowd like a wind that has finally found an open door. Sinon, the deserted Greek, eyes reddened, voice scratched by salt, tells his story with a craftsman's care for detail. The Greeks, he says, have given up. This horse is a sacred offering to the gods. To wound it would invite bad luck. To bring it inside the walls would invite protection. He humbles himself into trustworthiness. He makes his pauses belong to the truth. Men who have slept light for 10 years feel their shoulders lower, almost against their will. Women who have counted bread by slices count by loaves again in their minds. Children giggle at the thought of this giant horse living inside the city as if it were a docile thing that could learn its name. But not all eyes join the celebration. Cassandra comes down the street, with her hair unbound by custom and bound by certainty, her mouth full of words the city does not want to hear. "Leave it," she says, voice soft at first, then steady. "Send it back to the sea. Fire is sleeping inside that wood." She touches the flank of the horse and shivers like someone who has put a hand to a fevered brow. People listen the way one listens to thunder far away, interested, but already planning the rest of the day. A man pats her sleeve and says, "Hush, child." She is not a child. She speaks again, but her sentences keep tripping on the smile the city offers her, the smile people keep for the perpetually mistaken. Her warning, true and unwelcome, falls to the ground like seeds scattered on stone. Then Laocoon comes through the dust, priest's linen bright even in the common light, two suns pacing him like small echoes. His eyes are not theatrical, they are tired and honest. "Beware of Greeks, especially when they carry gifts," he says, and the crowd's attention tightens, because his voice has the weight of a man whose prayers have bent weather. He takes a spear and casts it into the horse's side. The wood answers with a hollow thrum, a dark bell ringing from within. Some people flinch, others pretend they do not hear it. In some tellings, the sea sends serpents to punish Laocoon for defying a god's refined plan. In our telling for sleep, we need only say that fear rises, the kind that makes people look for the comfort of a different explanation. Sinon gives them one. He speaks of divine offense and necessary appeasement, of the horse that must be welcomed, not wounded. The crowd, grateful to be moved away from worry, moves away. By midday, the city has made up its mind. Ropes are thrown, shoulders lower beneath the pull. The horse rolls toward the gate, wheels complaining, like old men indulged one more story. Flowers appear from nowhere. A pipe plays a quick dance. You can feel how thin the distance is between fatigue and celebration, how ready people are to set their burdens down and call it providence. A guard laughs for the first time in months and does not stop even when he sees his captain watching him. The captain pretends not to see, because he is laughing a little too. Cleon stands with Alara and their mother at the edge of the crowd. His mother's hands are flower white, though she has left the table. Habit leaves traces. Ilara's eyebrows ask questions without moving her mouth. "Take it inside," she says. "We could stable it in the square. It would be an excellent direction marker. Turn left at the enormous horse, and then right at the well." The joke lands softly. Cleon almost smiles, and does not. The unease beneath his ribs has learned patience. It does not shout, it tugs. Cassandra crosses close enough that Alara could touch her. She does not. Cassandra's eyes are fixed, as if she is reading a script written on the air. "Not in," Cassandra whispers, to no one and to everyone. "Not in." She passes, and the crowd knits itself behind her like water. At the gate, the horse hesitates. The old hinges remember their ancestors and complain, but consent. The city swallows what it has been offered. The horse stands at last within the walls, a new mountain casting a new shadow. People come and go beneath it, as if walking beneath a blessing. Priests sprinkle water and chant words that have always worked before. The shape of the day tilts toward evening, like a dish tipped to pour sweetness. There is wine. There is bread with sesame. A boy climbs onto his father's shoulders to see over the crowd and shouts that he can see the whole world. The baker gives away 2 loaves and later cannot say why. The baker's wife, who knows why before he does, says nothing and touches his arm. Songs start in one street and are completed in another, as if the city is testing whether it still knows how to sing across distances not patrolled by fear. Lamps flare. Doorways, long narrowed to utility, widen to welcome. Cleon walks his section of the western wall at sundown. The light makes everything edible. Stones look like bread crust. Helmets glow like honey. He feels the strangeness of ease settling, foreign and tempting. Myron finds him and leans over the parapet. If they are gone, we will build that cedar house, he says. I have chosen the hill. He points to a place that is only a darker shape against the darkening world. Cleon nods. He tries the future on like a garment and finds it fits in the shoulders and pinches at the throat. Tomorrow, he says, testing the word. It sounds miraculous, like a coin found in an old coat. It also sounds fragile. Night hums. The city, which has kept itself narrow for a decade, unfolds itself like linens preserved for a festival. There is dancing in streets, trimmed to marching. There is singing in courtyards, trained to silence. The wine moves quickly, and resistance to it moves slowly, then not at all. Guards lean on spears and tell each other small, good lies, that their feet do not hurt, that the wind is warm, that their wives are not angry, that they will sleep the sleep of boys tonight. In the square, the horse stands very still. The lamplight climbs its legs and stops, as if uncertain whether to go farther. Owls speak from the temple roof in a language that never flatters. The moon, which has watched long wars and quick friendships, keeps her opinions to herself. Cleon returns home. His mother has cut the bread thinner than she meant to. Celebration makes even careful hands careless. Ilara swallows a laugh and then lets it out, because tonight, even sorrow allows laughter to pass without a toll. They eat in the courtyard, speaking of small things as if to instruct the night in how to behave. The new pot, the neighbor's dog, the fig tree that has decided at last to be generous. Cleon watches the doorway. Watching doorways has become a habit. He wants to forget the habit. He cannot. His mother sees the line of worry beside his mouth and smooths it with a look. Sleep, she says gently. Let the city keep itself for once. He lies down, armor within reach as always. Somewhere a lyre finds a tune that has learned to avoid sadness without denying it. Somewhere a drunk man blesses the gods by name and then apologizes for forgetting one. Somewhere a child dreams of the horse opening its mouth to drink rain. The city sighs and rolls onto its better side. At the deep center of night, when even the crickets pause between measures, a small sound becomes a door. A latch moved with a practiced hand. A rope eased from a peg. A breath kept, then given back. The belly of the horse loosens its seam, like a mouth deciding to speak. Shadows pour out in human shapes, feet feeling for wood, then stone. They do not hurry. Haste is noisy. They do not speak. Silence has been practicing for them for hours. A runner on the wall hears something he cannot name and cannot deny. He looks toward the square, sees only darkness gathering and spreading where it should not. He opens his mouth to cry warning and finds that the warning will need a path. He runs. By the time he reaches the bell, other doors are open that should be shut, and other feet are already on the stairs. Far off, On the sea's black page, inked oars write a quiet sentence. The fleet returns, reading the secret map of the coast, guided by the small light of a hand raised from within. The bell speaks. Shouted names try to wake the city all at once, but cities wake by neighborhoods. The sleeping becomes sitting. The sitting becomes standing. Hands become hands that search for children, for helmets, for reasons. The square, recently a bowl of laughter, learns to hold other sounds without breaking. In the confusion, kindness survives. Someone presses a lamp into a stranger's hand. Someone lifts an elder over a threshold. Someone points without words to a safer alley. Cleon is already moving. The habit of watching doorways suddenly becomes the skill of finding them. He wakes Elara with a touch that becomes a grip when the world insists. Their mother does not ask questions. She gathers what the day would own anyway: shawl, keys, the little gods. Where? Elara asks, and then answers herself. The back way, the narrow stairs. They pass the altar in the niche. Cleon touches it and feels, ridiculous and real, that the stone touches him back. The city is not a helpless thing. Doors close. Men brace them with their bodies and their fathers' bodies behind them. A captain shouts, orders that make sense because he has been rehearsing them in his sleep for a decade. Women pull water in lines. Buckets move hand to hand as if they are passing a baby. Above, on the western wall, Myron strings his bow with the easy exactness his father taught him. He finds his measure even as the night changes its step. Yet the plan inside the horse was older than any fire bucket. It has rehearsed itself in silence. Gates unlocked from within are friendly to enemies. Flares of flame find the places where roofs lean toward one another. A dozen small catastrophes combine into a pattern too large for quick hands to unweave. Priam moves through his palace with the dignity of someone who refuses to let his last acts be smaller than his first. Aeneas lifts his father and his household gods and makes of his back a kind of bridge. Helen sits very still in the temple's shadow, a woman and a symbol, trying not to be either, listening for the footstep that will decide tomorrow's version of her name. Cleon leads his family through the lanes he knows blindfolded. The narrow stair behind the dye-maker's courtyard, the alley that smells of crushed figs, the arch where the mason never finished smoothing the seam. At a small postern, they join a slow river of people who have found the same seam of hope. No cries, only breathing. The gate opens in a way that does not betray itself. Outside, the plain is dark and wide and terrible and free. Elara takes their mother's arm. Walk, she says. We will walk until fear has to sit down. Cleon hesitates. The city is behind him, and his life is inside it like a lamp he forgot to blow out. He is torn between two duties that each speak with the voice of love. Then he hears Myron's whistle from the wall, a shape of sound they invented as boys to say later, "Meet me where the hill begins." He knows there will be no later there tonight. He knows that saving these two people is a victory he can make with his own hands. He steps into the plain. Behind them, the city burns in patterns that will become stories. Some endings are quiet, like Priam's last blessing. Some are openings, like Aeneas' first step toward another shore. Some are decisions made in a small courtyard, with a loaf still cooling on the table. All of them are part of a night that will be remembered longer than the wall remembers, where it cast its shade at noon. Resolution. By the hour, when the first birds consider singing and decide it is too soon, the worst has passed. Flames contract into glow. Shouting dissolves into the exhausted murmur of counting. The sea, indifferent and faithful, resumes its ancient lesson on the shore. Smoke rises straight, as if the air itself wants to carry the weight away. The Greeks move through streets that look like the insides of their own dreams of victory. Some are ashamed of those dreams now that they stand in them. Some are satisfied. Some are simply tired. Odysseus, who believes more in outcomes than in poses, walks ground. He measured in his mind weeks ago and notes the difference between plan and fact, the way reality leaves scuff marks on the best ideas. He registers a detail no poet will keep. A pot unbroken on a step because someone set it down gently before running. Within the wreckage, there are islands of mercy. A soldier leads a child to a doorway that still stands and leaves him with a cup of water and a pat on the head, then returns to his orders. A woman whose house has not burned invites into her courtyard those whose houses have. The old law of hospitality remembers itself without being asked. On the wall, Myron keeps his post until a captain touches his shoulder and says, simply, "Go." He goes, and in going, he begins the long work of being a man after a night like this. Cleon and his family reach the low rise where the plain first learns the habit of becoming hills. They turn, not to witness, but because turning is a way to say goodbye. The city is a shadow inside a glow. "We will be poor for a time," their mother says, and in her saying is the blueprint of survival. A statement plain as a lintel, strong enough to hold a door. Alara squeezes her hand. "And then we will be something else," she answers. Not bravado, a promise. Cleon looks for the cedar hill Myron had chosen, and finds it in his mind, if not in his eyes. He does not know if this is exile or an errand. He chooses to believe it is both, and that both can be endured. Back within the walls, Helen's story bends, but does not break. Menelaus finds her in the temple where lamp smoke writes delicate letters in the air. There are versions of this meeting that prefer the clang of iron. Our version prefers the soft math of breath. He looks at her and sees time he cannot get back and a vow he cannot unmake. She looks at him and sees the same. A choice rises between them, like a third person. They choose a life after this life. It will not fix the old arithmetic. It will balance some of the sums. By first light, the horse is char, collapsed into an absence shaped like a lesson. The Greeks speak of victory. The Trojans who remain speak of mornings. The gods, having leaned and nodded and withheld and granted, recede into their weather. Athena attends to a new city's council somewhere far away. Aphrodite tends a birth. Zeus counts clouds. The world, which has been a theater for 10 years, returns to being a field where someone will plant barley tomorrow. What remains is the meaning. The horse becomes a proverb that fits into any mouth. Beware of gifts that flatter your wishes. Beware of certainty in the hour of relief. Remember that doors open inward as well as outward. But there is a gentler meaning too. That minds can make bridges where spears fail. That an idea, patiently shaped, can spare lives as easily as spend them. That discernment is a kind of hospitality we offer ourselves, welcoming what is true, sending what is harmful on its way without hatred. As the sun lifts, the Aegean throws sequins of light back at it. Gulls begin their usual gossip. Smoke thins. The path ahead draws itself, step by step, across the hills for those who have left, and through the work of mending for those who remain. Cleon breathes, counts, and decides the day will be crossed by small bridges again. A drink of water, a careful word, a hand on a shoulder. He cannot name the shape of his future, but he can carry his mother's keys and walk beside Ilara and make of that walking a vow. Let the tempo slow with the light. The worst noise has passed. The horse is gone. The lesson remains, not to frighten, but to settle the mind into clarity. Wars, the story tells us, are not always ended by the longest sword. Sometimes they are turned by the quiet hinge of thought, by the refusal to be flattered, by the courage to see what stands behind a pleasing shape. Breathe with that. In and out. The plain will green. The sea will keep its counsel. Morning will spread itself over broken stones and over new paths alike, and every path, if walked with care, leads toward a gentler hour. Dawn does not so much arrive as discover what the night has done. It finds streets lit by a fire that has learned the map of the city too well. Gates hang crooked in their sockets, teeth knocked from a once smiling mouth. The square that hosted songs only hours ago now holds the aftertaste of shouting. Smoke climbs in slow, deliberate columns, as if even ruin has adopted a gentler pace for morning. The western gate is broken open, a rib sprung from Troy's chest. Splinters and iron lie together, an untidy marriage. The air carries three notes at once: the crackle of beams, the last sharp cries of alarm fading into hoarse quiet, and the softer sounds of hands lifting, guiding, counting loved ones by touch. What was many is becoming less. What was sure is changing tense. In the palace, the old law of dignity persists for a while against the new law of force. Priam moves through shadowed halls that have learned the names of his steps over a lifetime. He is wrapped not in armor, but in years, and in a kingliness that is simply steadiness under a heavy bowl. Before the altar, where he has always exchanged breath for blessing, he tries to lift the city one last time with the small, precise act of being himself. It is not enough to change the outcome. It is enough to preserve the measure of his soul. His end comes without spectacle in our telling, only a silence that asks those present to lower their eyes and to remember that even defeat can be met with courtesy. Elsewhere, another thread slips forward: Aeneas, whose courage is a habit rather than a drumbeat. He bends, and his father's arm settles across his shoulders. Household gods find a home against his chest. His son's hand finds his own. He steps into the debris, not as through an ending, but as into a corridor that will eventually open to sea light. His path is simple, made of small, obedient choices. This street rather than that. Pause and listen. Wait, then move. Behind him, a city's story closes. Before him, another's begins, unformed and patient. Along the harbor road and through the narrower lanes, women are gathered, their voices low and purposeful, as if they are speaking to newborns or to storms. The invaders assemble lines, but the women assemble themselves, into clusters of kin, into ropes of hands, into a net that will not keep them from the ships, but will keep them from falling apart on the way. Hecuba's bearing turns rough ground into a sort of floor. Andromache holds her child a last time in a way that teaches him what holding is for. Cassandra looks past the horizon, her truth still wider than the morning can accept. Destiny makes them captives. The dignity of their steps refuses to let destiny have the last word. Within this larger motion, smaller stories continue their work. A jar of water is shared. A shawl is placed across another's shoulders without the fuss of asking names. The old custom of hospitality does not forget itself all at once. Even now, it flickers. Trojans offering Trojans what the day has stolen. Greeks offering a sip, a moment's shade, a path unblocked. After a long night of tricks, plain kindness appears like a true thing that needs no argument. And Cleon, our careful, bread-scented soldier of ordinary hopes, stands at the edge of two worlds for the last time inside these walls. He has led his mother and Ilara through back stairs and narrow courtyards along the seam where shadow meets stone. At the small postern, among a river of quiet bodies, he has a choice that feels like a door with no handle. Turn back toward the wall where Myron still holds a bow, or turn outward toward the hill line that looks like a promise if you squint and breathe slow. He hears the soft, private whistle he and Myron invented years ago, a call that used to mean later, by the fig tree. It threads the smoke like a fragile string. His mother's hand is light on his sleeve. Ilara's gaze is level, eyebrows speaking the question and the answer in the same breath. He understands then that survival, too, is a form of duty. The city will have many defenders today. His family has only him. He touches the altar stone set into the postern for travelers, the one he has brushed 100 mornings without thinking, and this time he lingers. The stone is warm. He steps outward. His last moments in Troy are simple. A breath shared with those he loves. The soft drag of sandals on dust. The knowledge that leaving is not betrayal, but a different kind of guard. Behind them, flame completes its arguments with timber. Roofs yield their beams. The clamor thins into a scattering of isolated sounds. One door thudding shut, one vessel tipping, one horse blowing out its breath as if the night were a long race finally ended. The city's great voice is gone. What remains are human-sized noises. A lullaby murmured to a frightened child, not to make him sleep, but to teach him the shape of calm. An elder naming the streets they pass as if the names themselves can bless the soles of their feet. Someone saying here, and pressing a crust of bread into someone else's hand. In the conquered streets, the victors move through their prize slowly, the way a man runs his hand over a carved bowl, admiring the work and missing, for a moment, the tree it came from. A few lift their eyes to the smoke and wonder, quietly, to themselves, whether this is what they had imagined on the long sail out, when the sea promised glory in the abstract tense. Odysseus, measuring the distance between plan and cost, notes the places where the map and the world disagreed. He pockets the observations the way other men pocket bright pebbles from the shore. And over all of it, the pace slackens. The first true light sifts the air into layers. Ash gray, ember orange, sea glass blue. Birds test a note and reconsider. The wind, which had labored all night like a bellows, rests its elbows and lets the smoke rise straight. The city is no longer falling. It has fallen. The hard verbs are done. The day offers gentler ones. Gather, carry, soothe, lead, begin. On the hill line, Cleon and his family stop to look back, not to be wounded by what they see, but to agree on what they will remember. Ilara names 3 things aloud, to fix them as anchors. The taste of sesame on warm bread, the way the market smelled on spring mornings, the joke about the stew pot that never let the stew leap out. Their mother adds a 4th, your father laughing, even when wood refused to be what he asked. Cleon says nothing. His memory is a table he will set later, carefully. For now, he counts breaths and steps and lets each count be a prayer. In the harbor, ships take on their human cargo with a discipline learned from storms. Ropes creak, gangplanks knock, orders travel along the water's skin. Women board with backs straight. Boys look once, only once, at the city that held their beginnings. Priests of the invaders make quick offerings for safe passage. The sea receives both grief and triumph with the same unjudging arms. Waves erase footprints from the shore, as if to spare the earth the burden of keeping track. By mid-morning, the loud work is done. Fires burn lower, to themselves. Smoke thins and becomes a scrim the wind can lift. The horse is only a blackened suggestion of its former self, a lesson made of ash, hollow even in ruin. The square is empty of movement and full of consequence. The palace casts a different shadow. The temples, still standing, seem to hold a breath that will not be released until evening. And in this softer register, the story slows for you, the listener. We do not crowd the mind with each cruelty. Sleep does not need them. We place instead a few stones you can step on, one by one, across the stream of what happened. A king met his end without breaking his manners. A man carried his father and his gods out through a place where flame did not touch. Women remembered how to walk together. A young soldier chose a quiet road so that the two people he loved most could keep the music of their days. The city fell, but it did not cancel the bread, the jokes, the careful work. These float, embers of meaning, ready to light other hearths. Listen, the noise has become hush. The plain inhales. The sea resumes its patient lesson along the shore, constant, unafraid of repetition. Smoke drifts toward the higher air, where it will be taken apart and softened, then forgotten by everything except the rain. In the streets that remain, cats pick their way like careful thoughts. Somewhere, a bell, cracked but serviceable, finds the will to ring, not for alarm now, but to tell the hour. It sounds ordinary. Ordinary is a miracle after a night like this. Let your breath follow that new tempo. In and out, in and out. What had to happen has happened. The gates are quiet. The embers are folding themselves inward. The city is a warm seam under a cooling quilt of ash. Even the gods step back and let the human world be small and repairable. Soon, we will lay the story down into the soft grass beyond the battlefield and speak gently about what it means, how cunning toppled force, how care can build what pride destroys, how tomorrow's work is lighter when the mind chooses clear seeing over easy comfort. But for now, allow the night's clamor to drain from your shoulders. Let the picture narrow. Not the whole city, not even a street. Just one square of sun on unbroken wall. One piece of bread shared. One path across the hills that will take a little time and give it back as peace. Breathe. The war is no longer a shout. It is a memory learning to be quiet. Breathe in and out. Let the noise of the night soften to a far shore. The story has walked you through its long corridors, rumor and oath, bronze and fire, pride and pity, a wooden shape that concealed a turning. Now we come to the quiet room at the end, the place where meanings settle, like ash that doesn't sting but fertilizes the ground. A gentle philosophy of war, pride, and cunning. The Trojan War teaches with two voices. The first is loud and ancient. It sings of spears, of heroes whose names can still wake echoes on stone. The second is smaller, closer to the ear. It murmurs about judgment, about doors, and what we allow through them. The loud voice tells us that strength can surge like the sea. The quiet voice reminds us that the sea yields to the shoreline's patient curve. Pride shines in this tale like polished bronze, beautiful, heavy, and quick to heat. It gives men backbone, and then, if uncooled, burns their hands. Achilles' pride answers an insult with distance. Hector's pride steadies a city. Priam's pride becomes dignity that kneels rather than breaks. We learn that pride is not an enemy, but a flame to be tended, fed when courage needs warmth, tamped when anger seeks to devour the very house it lights. Cunning moves differently. It does not glitter, it arranges. It asks questions that swords cannot answer. What do they believe? What story would their hands be eager to pull through the gate? The horse was not a victory of tricks over virtue, but of thought over habit, of attention over assumption. It reminds us that intelligence is not merely sharpness, it is softness used with discipline. A mind can be a weapon, yes, but it can also be a bridge, a lamp, a lock, a key. The moral is not outwit at any cost. The moral is look deeper than pleasure, deeper than relief, deeper than the comfort of being done. Wisdom is the patience to examine what feels good to believe, and the kindness to choose what is good to live with. Underneath both pride and cunning lies hospitality, the ancient law that turned strangers into guests and meals into covenants. The war begins with its fracture and pauses, briefly, when that law is honored again in Priam's plea and Achilles' consent. Here is a soft, durable truth. Even in the theater of force, a shared bowl and a hand on the knee can restore a grammar older than anger. A people are held up as much by their bread and their manners as by their walls and their songs. So the philosophy is simple enough to remember in the dark. Keep pride warm, not wild. Keep intelligence honest, not cruel. Keep hospitality awake, even when the world shouts. When these are tended, a city sleeps safely. When they are neglected, even the strongest gates can be persuaded to open to what should remain outside. The bridge to tonight. Now let us cross from their shore to ours, from Troy's embers to the quiet light of your room. Our age does not build enormous wooden horses on beaches. We build smaller ones, digital, psychological, social. They arrive as updates and headlines, as urgent promises and soothing shortcuts, as offers that say, "Wheel me inside, and your worry will end." They are elegant shapes that flatter our hopes. This app, this rumor, this outrage, this shortcut to being right. We bring them past our thresholds because they relieve the ache of uncertainty. And like the Trojans, we are tired. We wish to rest. But the story suggests a practice you can carry softly into tomorrow. Tap the plank. Before you welcome a shiny gift into your attention, an article, a claim, a certainty, give it the Laocoon test. Tap and listen for hollowness. Ask, who built this? What does it ask me to feel quickly instead of think slowly? What enters my mind if I let this through? Consult Cassandra kindly. Somewhere inside you is a voice that warns without applause. The uneasy tug Cleon felt. The quiet, not in. It might be cautious. It might be wrong. But it deserves a hearing. Give it 2 breaths. Often, wisdom is simply the choice not to silence your own honest discomfort. Remember hospitality. Standards are not gates that exclude. They are tables that seat the worthy. True ideas are not offended by a few questions. True guests accept bread and also scrutiny. To keep your mind generous and discerning at once is to keep your inner city well. Honor ordinary courage. Much of life is not duel or dawn raid, but the steady work of mending and sharing. Cleon's form of bravery, carrying keys, guiding family, choosing the living day, is available to anyone every morning. It does not earn songs. It earns sleep. Use cunning as care. Odysseus's mind could end a war. Your mind can end a quarrel. Soften a meeting. Craft a plan that saves time and spares hearts. Let your cleverness be a shepherd, not a wolf. When you look at your own gates, the boundaries of your attention, your time, your affection, you can choose what enters. Not with fear, not with a fortress mentality, but with tender discernment. You can still practice welcome to ideas that nourish, to people who bring bread instead of blaze, to tasks that align with the kind of city you wish to be inside. And if you discover that you have already wheeled in a horse, a habit that drains you, a belief that darkens your regard for others, an obligation that pretends to be sacred but only feeds your pride, remember what the sea did after Troy. It kept washing the shore clean. You can roll things back out. You can thank them for the lesson and open the gate toward the beach. The mind, too, has tides. A soft, poetic closing. Now picture Troy one last time, not in the heat of ending, but in the kindness of after. The fires have folded into a glow that no longer bites. Smoke rises straight, pale as morning milk. Charred beams cool with small, patient sounds. In courtyards that held arguments and laughter, ash lies like a gray blanket, not accusing, only covering. A cracked bell, stubborn and useful, tests its voice and finds it still rings true. Along the shore, the sea resumes its ancient counting. Wave, return, wave, return. It has seen great ships launched with trumpets and small boats pushed off with silent chores. It forgives both. The gulls begin their gossip with the sun and cannot agree, as always, on what the night meant. Far out, the line where sky meets water is clean again, a seam stitched neat after rough work. Above it all, the stars stand their simple watch, indifferent to victories, loyal to light. You can choose any one of them and let your breath match its steadiness. In and out. Their pattern looked down on Hector's courage and Achilles' grief, on Andromache's steadfast hands and Priam's final courtesy, on Aeneas's careful steps and Helen's complicated gaze. The stars did not rush them. They will not rush you. Let the city's image soften further until it is only a lesson-shaped warmth in the chest. Let the horse become not a threat, but a symbol you understand and can use. Let the gods of that story take a respectful step back, making room for the quiet divinities of the present. Rest, patience, clarity, kindness. Feel your own room now. The gentleness of the pillow, the honest weight of blankets, the particular quiet that belongs to this hour. The air has a temperature that forgives. The dark has a texture you can lean into. Somewhere in the building, water moves in pipes with a soothing, river-like logic. Somewhere outside, a late car passes like a harmless thought that doesn't ask to be kept. Within you, the day finishes its last small tasks and lays down its tools. If there is any pride left bristling, smooth it the way you would smooth a blanket for a child. Let it become warmth, not weapon. If there is any cleverness still spinning, set it on the table beside the bed and say, "Tomorrow we will make good plans." If there is any grief, give it a chair and a glass of water and tell it, "Stay. You are welcome." But tonight, we sleep. We are not promised cities that never fall or lives that never bend. We are promised rhythms, the tide that returns, the star that keeps, the breath that repairs. The story of Troy folds into those rhythms now. What remains is a slender, useful wisdom you can carry without effort. See more deeply than relief. Keep your gates kind and awake. Let your mind choose bridges over blades. Honor the small heroism of ordinary mornings. And now, Let the picture go. The burned city cooling, the sea smoothing its own blue, the stars steady as pulse. Let your jaw unclench, your shoulders sink, your breathing lengthen into the soft cadence of enough. Time eases its grip. Minutes loosen into a gentle thread. The war is far away. What is near is quiet. What is next is rest. In and out. In and out. May your sleep be guarded by discernment, warmed by humble pride, and eased by the knowledge that wisdom often whispers. May the gates of your attention open at dawn to what is true and close at dusk against what is hollow. And may the steady sea of your breath carry you now, calmly, kindly, into the wide, healing dark. Now, you feel the ancient story quieting. Like footsteps fading down a long corridor, every scene grows softer, lighter, farther away. What remains is the gentlest echo, a wooden shore, a cooling city, the sea's slow hush, and your own breathing. The fires go out, only the stars remain, pinpoints of calm, steady and patient, looking down without judgment, without hurry. Let your breath match their rhythm. Breathe calmly, slowly, gently. In through the nose for a soft count of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold for a quiet beat. Out through the mouth for 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Again. In. 1, 2, 3, 4. A soft pause. Out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let the body learn the story of release. Your forehead smooths. The small muscles around your eyes let go. The jaw unhooks, tongue resting warm and loose. Shoulders slide down as if set back on their shelf. Arms feel heavy in a good way. Safe, placed, finished. Hands uncurl. Fingers forget to hold anything. The chest widens to meet the breath. The heart keeps a calm, even drum. The belly softens like sand, settling flat after a wave. Hips settle into the mattress. Thighs melt. Calves grow quiet. Ankles easy. Feet a little warm. From crown to heel, one long exhale. Now, you feel the ancient story quieting. Names drift apart into gentle syllables. Images fold like linens and are put away. Nothing asks for effort. Nothing calls you back. The fires go out. Only the stars remain. Above a coastline that exists now only as peace, the sky keeps watch. You do not need to keep watch. You are the guest tonight, and the room is prepared. Breathe calmly, slowly, gently, in and out, in and out. Each breath is a small boat crossing a very short, very safe harbor. If a thought arrives, give it a seat by the window and let it watch the stars. If a sound passes by, let it pass all the way by, like a cart on a distant road, already gone. If the day tries one last time to speak, thank it, then close the door softly. Feel the bed holding you the way the sea holds a sleeping oar. Feel the blanket's weight as a quiet promise. Feel how the room has learned your breathing and keeps the same pace. Now, even the counting can rest. You are not required to remember, to decide, to plan, only to float. The fires go out, only the stars remain, and even the stars feel nearer now, like calm companions. Their light does not wake you, it blesses you. Breathe calmly, slowly, gently. Let the inhale gather comfort. Let the exhale release the last small knot. If you wish, imagine a shoreline at first light. Smoke lifted, water, glass smooth, gulls undecided and quiet. Let each breath be a tide smoothing the sand, erasing every footprint. Nothing to hold, nothing to chase, only the soft return. Sleep comes the way dawn comes, without force, simply by arriving. You can meet it halfway, or not at all. It will reach you. May your sleep be peaceful. May the past watch over your rest, and may tomorrow begin with a bright morning. May the gates of your attention close gently now, keeping out what is hollow, keeping in what is kind. May your breath remain easy, your dreams untroubled, your body restored. Now, the story is done speaking. The stars continue, your breath continues, and you are already on the quiet road into night.